Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Yvette Jett, and I am the strategic leadership coach. And today I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Amber Shields. And when I tell you, she's amazing. We were having a full conversation before we started. I think we could have kept talking, right, Amber? Like it
I
was
think
like,
we
oh my
could
God,
have.
we got to push the button. We have to push the button. But the way I met Amber actually was on a different social media platform, and I love what she had to say. And I thought it was so critical for educators to hear her message and just to hear her passion for education. And I had to give you your flowers. Now I'm gonna give it to you publicly. You didn't know I was gonna do this. But one thing that drew me to her, because she was so pretty. Like she is
Oh,
so pretty. And she's out there just doing her thing and educating our children and showing them representation, right? Because it matters. And so in her, she has extensive experience in education, over a decade of experience. So Amber, I'll let you introduce yourself. Tell us about the principal mom, and then we'll go into our topic.
yes. Well, first and foremost, I have to thank you just for giving me the opportunity to come into this platform and have the opportunity to share with people who regularly engage with you. And thank you for what you're doing because leadership is so important. And I think it's important that leaders have individuals who are focused on helping them be the best version of themselves. But a little bit about me, I have, like you said, over a decade in education, and I've been from a kindergarten teacher to a third grade teacher, assistant principal, and most recently, I was a campus principal in a large urban school district for about 4 years, and it was an early childhood center. And so that position was definitely near and dear to my heart. Um, After working in that position for 4 years, I had the opportunity to expand my leadership by supporting Dallas County district leaders with early childhood efforts in their different districts. Early childhood is something that is very, very important to me. I think that a lot of times in education, if we got the foundation right, we wouldn't have to throw up these Hail Marys and all these other things that often happens in education.
Mhm.
So definitely was excited to take a step away from the campus to
Mhm.
the nonprofit space and expand my leadership in that way.
Oh, wow. And you know what? You said something that's so important, starting it early. Oh, my goodness. That foundation is so critical. And I saw that you did some reading, teaching, and things of that nature. And
Mhm.
I mean, so you understand the importance of education early and doing it right in the early phases. So tell me, what made you go into leadership in the schools? Because, you've been a principal mommy. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I don't think if someone would have asked me 10 years ago, will you be a principal? I probably been like, not me. No, that's not for me. But
Mm.
somehow God had other plans for me. I was always a teacher leader. At the very first campus I worked at, I was a founding teacher. So I had a lot of opportunities at that campus to be responsible for development of systems on the campus that ended up being permanent fixtures in terms of how we did things. And I always enjoyed doing that. And I
Okay.
found as a teacher, I gravitated towards opportunities to create systems
Mm.
and to mentor other teachers. I remember having the opportunity to do peer observations, and I was like, I like giving people feedback and going in other classrooms. But then when someone approached me about leadership, I was like, oh, no, 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 no. I don't want the title. I just want to do it. And I honestly had to be pushed by a mentor. Why
Mm.
not you? Why not you? And I was
Mm.
like, but I'm young, I'm this, I'm that. And they're like, but why not? Why not you? And so I think when I was posed that question, it really made me reconsider
Mhm.
my journey into leadership. And I was like, yeah, why not me?
Wow.
So I had an opportunity to expand my impact outside of the classroom. And I think that's the biggest thing that drew me to leadership. Within my classroom as a teacher, I could impact 25 kids. But if I'm supporting as a leader, I have the opportunity to multiply that across a building.
Mm.
And I really found joy in supporting not only students, but in supporting staff. So that was part of
Okay.
what encouraged me to go into leadership.
That's so interesting because you don't hear many leaders understanding it from that dynamic, right? That and I'm a person, this is my philosophy for life, and I'm not going to change it. I want all the power in the world, right? Because I want to impact people and I want to do good for as many people as I can. And I'm just a firm believer in God. So I'm like, I know He's going to guide me in
Mhm.
the right direction. And I think leaders kind of miss that point, right? Especially when good people don't go into leadership. So that's so awesome that you took the plunge and took the nudge from your mentor. So, what was it that your mentor said that really pushed you into it?
Um, the why not me? And then I think
Mm,
just really conveying to me the expansion of my impact that will be possible as a leader.
okay.
Um, and I think they also just knew a little bit about me. They're like, you're comfortable right now. You're comfortable in your role, and that's okay. But where growth happens is at that point of discomfort. And
Ooh,
so being willing to step into that discomfort, which for me was assuming the formal title of a leader, because I had my list of all the reasons why I couldn't. I'm like, I have young kids, I have this, I have
mm,
that. That's why I can't. But those are reasons that honestly help make me a better leader because it brings that the perspective that is unique to me that I
okay.
was able to bring to leadership.
I like that. And I have a moniker with impact, where it's influence, motivation, participation, achievement, and teamwork. And I
Mm,
think that's where leaders can make the most impact. And I'm glad you pushed all your issues and concerns aside to make it happen. And I want to touch on something 'cause I think it goes together very well. Principal mommy. And there's so many mommies out there that
mhm.
have careers, are in teaching, and want to go to the next level. So, what does principal mommy mean to you? Does that have any correlation with being a mommy and having young kiddos?
Yes. And so Principal Mommy kind of emerged during the
Mhm.
pandemic as I was one being a principal during the pandemic, but I had also just had my third child. So
Oh,
I felt at that point in 2020, I was really navigating the crux of professionalism and motherhood. And what does that mean? And how do you find some
mhm.
sense of balance with both? And that's kind
Okay.
of where Principal Mommy emerged because I felt that I wanted to be I wanted to just document one, my journey of trying to do both, but also hope to inspire other people. If
Okay.
you want to go into leadership and leadership is something that you're passionate about, or you're just in education, because I think, or you're not in education at all and you're in another field and you're just trying to navigate being a
Yeah.
working mom. That's something that is near and dear to me because I think as women, it's important for us to just empower each other and remind each other that we're not alone because
Yeah.
sometimes it does feel like I'm the only one going through this. And actually, it's a probably a chance that there are 2 or 4 people on your block that are actually going through the same thing. So
Exactly.
Principal Mommy was just an avenue, for me to do that, but it also became an avenue for me to talk about leadership development, my
Okay.
journey to leadership, um, just suggestions on how I navigate things, and even
Okay.
shifts I've made as a leader. Like, these
Yeah.
are some mistakes I've learned from, and this is what I've done now. And so it's just been a great way to have conversation with people across the country just around leadership, and it's been really great and fulfilling.
That is so awesome, and we'll make sure that we can have the audience get in touch with you to learn more about Principal Mommy. And I think that leads us because you were saying something that I think was so critical about the influence and the impact that you make. And I know you and I discussed before about the culture, right? How can we create a culture and an environment in our schools and with our educational leaders? So, how did you, when you were in the school, create the culture? And then we'll go to you outside the school now.
Yeah. So inside the school, I think someone said to me, I made a video recently where I was talking about a specific component of school culture. And they commented, I just finished a master's in leadership,
Wow.
school leadership, and that wasn't taught in my program.
Mm.
And so as I approach leader as a new leader, again, there were things that were not taught in my program.
Really?
But when you think about emotional intelligence and you think about how organizations outside of education are striving to be a best place to work, a best place to work for moms, or all of these different accolades, we really need to take a look back and say, as educators and as educational organizations, how do we focus on the culture and the organizational health of our organizations?
Mm.
it wasn't until I began to do that and think about culture and morale from a
Yeah.
different lens that I began to approach it differently.
Wow.
Um, one of the pivotal things that happened, I mentioned COVID already, COVID. We
Yeah.
saw a large exodus of teachers from the teaching profession, yet we continue to kind of run schools in terms of culture the way we had been doing so. But
Yeah.
what COVID provided to educators was we were working from home. People saw what the freedom and flexibility, and they're like, I don't want to go back into that building and do that anymore. Like, that is not the life for me. So, with that learning, how can we then create a culture? We can't work from home every day as educators. Like, that's just a given. But
Right.
what type of culture can we cultivate that creates where people want to come to work each day?
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and I think those were some of the beginning thoughts that I had that kind of helped me to just reflect on just doing things differently.
Doing it. So what's the one thing that you did differently that you so in order to create that culture, what's one thing that you did differently?
I believe that everything starts with a vision and a plan. So I began to strategically plan for culture. What does that look like? How do I want people to feel in the building? Like, what are those values um, that as an organization we want to be true? So if one of those values is harmony, what does that look like? How do we create opportunities for harmony?
Mhm.
Because the other thing that happened when we went back to the building after COVID was people were teaching, the students were still at home, the teachers were in their rooms alone, and everybody didn't want to get sick, so there was not as much just camaraderie, I guess you would say. And that has to be in schools because we need each other to add that support system. So starting with that vision and that culture plan of what it would consist of, and you start really high level and then begin to get actionable about what
Mhm.
are specific things and what does that look like. So that looks like for me, I'm at the door every morning greeting,
Like that.
saying hello, because that
Yes.
is the part of setting the tone. And I hear people talk about school leaders who are, I never see my school leader. They're always in their office. What
Yeah.
tone does that set for the building when the person who has the ability to create that warmth and that environment, and
Yeah.
they're not visible?
They're
They're
not
not
people.
visible. They're not visible to the staff. They're not visible to the parents. So if Coach Vet Jet is having a hard day and she happens to see her principal and like, I just need a moment. I'm
Yeah.
able to step in and provide that. But if I'm in my office, I don't know you're having a hard day because I'm in my own world. So
Mm.
those are just some of the things that I just began to think about as a result of planning and then determining what are the things that I wanted to be true for the building that I was leading.
That is so, and you know what? Just having that intentionality will create the culture, right? And I think that is so critical just to have that intentionality behind that. And Amber, I'm always brainstorming about how to bring culture to the school systems, right? I worked in an organization that was all about culture. That's all they
Mhm.
like focused on, and it kept people there forever. One of the things we used to do was play cornhole. And I'm addicted to cornhole. I have it at my house and everything because I love cornhole. We would stop working, and they always did it combined with the birthday celebration. We celebrated birthdays every month, and we played cornhole. We
Mhm.
played Uno. And I was speaking with another coach and saying, why aren't we doing that in the morning at schools? I get kids are moving, a lot is going on, but like, let's create a community. Not every parent has to be at work at 8 or 9 o'clock, right?
Mhm.
Say we get some cornhole out there in the front because the kids are there early and the administrators are there early. Just play a couple of rounds with the kids,
I
or
love
like
that.
just a couple of Uno cards with the kids, because school does not have to be hard. Now, can it be challenging? Yes, but it doesn't have to be a miserable place or a building that everyone goes
And
to.
like, oh, I don't want to go.
This is the misery of my life. Because I was even having this conversation with my son. The whole purpose of school is to have a place of learning and growing. And
Mhm.
how can people ever love learning and growing if in the one place where they have to learn and grow isn't any fun? Like,
That's so true.
why would we want to be and learn forever if the place I go to learn is horrible? So how did, oh, this is a good one. How did your faculty and students gravitate towards that vision? Was that hard to influence them to gravitate towards that?
I think that when you're embarking on a change initiative, you'll have your early adopters, and then you'll have people who are like, I'm not so sure about that, are hesitant. But it's really important to continue to um, articulate what the vision is and what are the steps that you're doing to reach that vision. And so I love that you mentioned the morning time. So one of the things that we did in the morning was we played music, and I love the games. I'm like, I wish I would have thought about like having those big yard games or something for the kids to engage with. We played games, not we played games, we played music. We played music as the students were coming through the door, and the music may change depending on the time of year. But
Okay.
the one change that we did for the staff was greeting every kid at the door. So,
Yes.
and that starts from the curb all the way to the next door that they walk in. So if you open that door, my instructions to the staff members who are opening doors was, it's good morning. Let's have a great day. Not
Yes.
these are the words I want to hear. Like, I don't want you to just open the door, because that doesn't communicate to them that you are excited for them to be here today. And
Okay.
we often talked about, what is that Chick-fil-A customer service experience?
Mhm.
And why do people, when it's a Chick-fil-A and a competitor across the road, the Chick-fil-A line could be wrapped around that building, but I'm gonna go stand in that
I'm
Chick-fil-A
going to
line every
Chick-fil-A
time,
every
because
time.
I know that they're gonna be moving expeditiously. They're gonna have the workers outside ready to greet me. And that is the difference. And so I think my staff, as we began to conceptualize like what type of environment we wanted to be true, and
Yeah.
then also personalizing it to what would you want your child or your family member. I'll never forget, I had one of the staff when we were very early in this process of visioning. She said, at my daughter's school, they don't speak to me. They
Mm,
don't say hello, and it does impact how I feel about her going there.
yeah.
And I said, thank you for raising that concern,
Mm,
because the same way you feel is the way that other parents feel when they drop their children off at this school. So, how
exactly.
can we combat that? So, I think
Mhm.
involving my team in that process of discussing the vision. And so, what are the things that we're going to do to ensure that the parents feel welcome and feel safe, and
Mhm.
the kids feel welcome? And we're talking about arrival right now, but that's only one portion of the day.
Mm.
So, that culture piece, we can go break down what are those specific
Mhm.
actions for the different parts of the day, because there are so many opportunities for us to pour into, to
Yeah.
build culture, to build team. That's not just at the beginning of the day.
I like that, and it made me think of 2 things. At the church we go to, right? They are so big on culture that there's a person that stands, like, on the like, as you enter the driveway to the church, waving, right?
Mhm.
And someone we were going to church was, like, a visitor, they said, "Do you know them?" Like, "No, I don't." They wave they wave at everybody. If you're a car, they're
They
waving
go,
at you. And
yes.
strategically in the parking lot, there's, like, 2 or 3 people strategically, and everyone's waving at you from the curb, and then you get to the door, there's more greeters and hostess there. Then you get inside, and Amber, they're strategically moving around that place where everyone's greeted. Then you go over to the water and snack area, someone's greeting you. And so like you said, it's just building that culture. And that church has the data to prove that they've grown exponentially over
Mhm,
like the last like 2 or 3 years. That
mhm.
it's growth like no other, right? And like, wouldn't that be awesome if we actually did that in the school system? And I said that to somebody. I'm like, why isn't someone saying hi? Like, so that I don't, the first time I talk to you isn't when little so and so
Has
cut
a
it
problem.
short. We're like, oh my God, here they go. But they have that relationship.
Yep.
I must say, at one of the schools my kids went to, the assistant principal was always out there, always greeting, always saying hello. And then I did a session at my son's school. He has a leadership class at his school. And one of the things that was taught in that curriculum is for the teacher to greet and shake everyone's hand as they come through the door.
Mhm.
Amber, when I tell you that was the most well-behaved class I've ever seen, my own child was like, I'm like, oh, you act like I taught you something. Thank you,
Mhm.
my child. It was a whole different environment. And you could just tell the dynamics of the classroom were changed because of the interaction they
Mhm.
had and the culture they were building. So how do you spread that like throughout the whole school?
It starts with intentionality, like even hearing about the church example is a great example. I think that we know that that's not happening by happenstance, right?
Yeah.
That person just didn't randomly show up and decide to stand there. The greeters didn't just say, "Hey, I'm going to greet
Mm,
today." There was some intentionality and strategic planning on the front end. So in
mm,
order for our schools to get to a place to where we have these systems, there has to be some planning that goes into it,
okay.
and some vision setting. And
Mm,
oftentimes I was looking for other ways to systematize my culture. I think it's
okay.
important to systematize culture. In
Okay.
education, we have a lot of systems around instruction. And
Okay.
so one of those systems is you should meet with your leadership team once a week and discuss
Mm,
the instruction, the state of instruction in the school. That's a great strategy that will support improving student achievement. But equally important in my mind is culture. So how
mm,
are you and your team checking in on culture daily? So one of the things we implemented was a morning huddle with my leadership
I
team.
like those. Yeah.
So we do the quick huddle. You tell me your priorities for the day. We also touch in on culture. Like, is have y'all checked on staff? So one of the things that we would do after we finish receiving students in the morning, go quick and greet every teacher in the classroom. Hey,
Mm,
Miss Jet, how are you? Have a great day. Okay. So my leadership team and I would divide and do that. We would huddle immediately after that. So if there was a red flag or something going on, like Miss Shields is not looking too good today, y'all, we might need to like let's show her some extra love. Let's show her grace today,
mm.
whatever the case may be. But
Oh, yeah.
having that daily touch point where we could talk about the
Mm,
culture of the building, that was key. Another thing we did to remember talking about building systems around culture.
okay.
Weekly, we had a Monday, we called it a temperature check.
Okay.
My coach or was my counselor, a member of the leadership team would send it out and it would be like on a scale of 1 to 5, how are you feeling going into this week?
Mm.
1, I'm not ready and I want to go crawl back in my bed.
Yeah, that was me this week. I'm like, I want to go back to bed. Yes.
5 is like, I'm ready for the week. Let's go. Let's do this.
Oh.
The next question was, what support do you need this week?
Mm.
So did every staff member fill this form out? No. But the ones who did, when my team and I met that same day, that afternoon, we went through the forms. And so we already are thinking and how we're going to support according to what was listed in that temperature check. So these are systems that are existing to monitor culture.
Ooh, I like that. You know what that reminds me of? There's a book, and it's out now. It's the 2.0 book now. But the 1 Minute Manager, I want to say, I think it's Ken Blanchard. But the 1 Minute Manager, right, revolutionizes the way managers and leaders interact with their teams. And
Mhm.
he talks about walking around intentionally to see what good people are doing or how they're doing, right? Because you know the stigma when the principal comes around, like, oh my God, the principal's here, and everyone scatters or like they get like they start straightening up and no one's throwing paper,
Or they
so
send text messages. She's coming, y'all. She's coming.
and you hear all the dings going off and are silent, like vibrate, like, okay, yeah, I'm coming. But that culture, Amber, when you're walking around looking for the good, changes the way people interact with you. So tell me, because this is good, right? I mean, I think you need to teach this to a lot of principals. As a mom, right? As a mom, I would have loved you as a principal, right? Because I taught
Oh,
my principal like don't bring Miss Jet up here because she's gonna talk forever. One time, the assistant principal, I don't know what, he just called me to inform me my son wasn't in trouble. I could tell he's ready to get off the phone. I was just talking because I love talking to educators and administrators. I know they like, we are so tired. Can we go? Like, no, I want to keep talking. So I would have loved to have talked to you and have you in the school. So how do you transition out of the school, right? Making all that impact into what you do now?
yes. Um, So honestly, I wasn't necessarily looking to transition out of the school setting, but I had an opportunity to expand my impact, and that's kind of
Mm,
how my journey has been into leadership. And I see the same as the position that I'm in now, an opportunity to expand my impact.
Okay.
Because I don't directly in my current role work with campus leaders, I really try to use Principal Mommy and my platform in that way to engage with aspiring leaders, current leaders, just about things that they can do to continue to innovate in their leadership, specifically with regard to culture,
Okay.
because school culture honestly should be viewed just as important as student achievement, because if the
Mm,
people aren't happy, that's impacting the students,
okay.
and the people being the students and the staff. We've
Mm,
seen nationally some walkouts with teachers and leaders, and we've seen students walk out.
mm,
We really have to reimagine how we do school in this country. And that starts with being more strategic with the culture that we create. What are the feelings that students and staff feel when they enter our buildings? And
mm,
is it something that invites them to come back every day?
yeah.
Because it shouldn't be a dreaded place. So if you dread going to the place that you're going, how do you think you're going to perform when you get there if you already don't want to be there? And
Exactly.
that directly negatively impacts student achievement and how they're doing. But I think it was Rita Pearson who said, kids perform for people that they like. So, how are you
Mhm.
building those relationships? Because that's part of culture too. If you never show, and I see it, and I've never taught secondary, but in middle and high school, if you're just more of an authoritarian figure, and not that you should try to be their friends, but if you're not building relationships, learning what their interests are, and incorporating that into how you navigate the classroom, they may feel disengaged. So that's a part of culture as well, is thinking about the students as our customers and how we
Mm.
create an experience in the business world that would best fit and best suit our customers.
Oh my God, that is powerful because people buy from who they know, like, and trust. They do business with who they know, like, and trust. And I never ever thought about the kids perform by who they like.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. And you know what? Years ago, when I was in aviation, I was in the operation section of aviation, and the concept of internal customer. And for you to have that concept for the student is phenomenal because I've never heard that concept before. And I've heard so many disappointing stories with parents feeling like they were not served well by
Mhm.
administration or by a teacher. So how do we change that point of view or that lens, right? To look at these kiddos, look at the scholar as the customer and still maintain the power. How do you propose that?
There are so many lessons that can be taken from cross industry. And I think in education, we need to do that more.
Okay.
I love reading Harvard Business Review. Like I love reading business articles in general as a principal I did. And I mean, even now, but you can draw so many clear parallels to education and
Mhm.
how to function, how the organization should function. So one of the books my team and I read, and I'm going to butcher the title. So we were doing a Disney theme at school one year. We did a theme every year because that was part of our culture. Our
Okay.
culture was we do themes because we want the environment to feel magical.
Yes.
So this specific year, we did Disney as the theme. And as a leadership team, we read a book around Disney's culture.
Yes.
Anybody who's ever been to any Disney park knows that Disney is known for their culture, their
Yes.
customer service, and the experience they create.
Mm.
So my challenge to my team was, what would it be like for us to implement these principles that Disney has found that works for them? One of their
Yes.
principles is say yes as much as you can. So if you ask anybody working in a Disney theme park, like, can I get this? They're going to try to make it happen for you.
Yes.
What does
Yes.
that look like for us to do that in a school setting? For the teachers and for also for students, like as much as we can say yes, let's say yes. This
Yes.
student wants to start a random club that we never heard. Okay, yes, let's try to
Yes.
make that happen. And so I think us being able to see these multi-billion dollar Disney is
Yeah.
able to implement these things. And yes, you can argue like education, we don't have any money, like fiscally, like some of these things are not possible, but saying yes is free.
Exactly. Oh, wow. That
So
oh.
applying those basic principles that we can use to improve. And I'm trying to think about some more, but in the book, it also talks about just the beautification of Disney. In Disney, there is somebody constantly picking up trash. There is not there, that is a part of the environment. If
Yes.
we in schools would approach it with that same lens, because I would have some colleagues who they wouldn't see the point in like the beautification. And I was very particular about like my bulletin boards, like everything within my school building. Like I
Mhm.
wanted to look a certain way, but just how Disney cares, that's how we should care in schools. Because what message does that send when we don't care about the environment? Your environment is also a part of your culture. It helps to cultivate that.
Ooh, and that's so powerful. And I studied Disney, and and they have like a leadership program down at Disney because
Mhm.
they have one of the best leadership trainings like in the world. And we went to Disney over the summer, Amber. And I love Disney. I'm a big kid, right? I think I was more excited going to Disney World than my kids were. I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm at the happiest place on earth." And to this day, it was Minnie Mouse. I won't tell you I have another story. I'll tell you that another time. But it was Mickey Mouse and like Walt Disney, and they have a statue, and I took a picture of it and it's my screensaver. It's interesting that you said that. It's my screensaver now because anything is possible. It
Mm.
just takes magic. I mean, for someone to create a probably multi-billion-dollar industry off of fun, no one would have thought that, right?
Yeah.
But you will spend your whole mortgage, the rent, and the kids' savings just
Going to Disney.
and it's
Yeah.
gonna cost your arm and a leg. But like you said, it's the culture and environment. We were leaving and we had went out the wrong exit. So if you see me, right, if I'm hot or if I'm tired, I am not the same person. So don't catch me at Disney when it's like 100 and something and it's muggy and
Mhm.
I'm tired, right? So we went out the wrong exit. And so we had to go right back around. And the lady was so nice. It was probably like 9 or 10 o'clock when they were closing. She was so nice. I know she was tired because she had on way more clothes than I did. Because she's in full uniform. She has to swipe and like check everyone's bag. And just like just in school, you're checking bags, you're
Mhm.
checking kids, and she was so tired, and I was so cranky, just like kids are. I was so cranky. She like, did you have a good time today? Like, yes. Like, she's
Like, don't talk to me.
I feel so. I want to see her again because I was so bad. And she's like, "Oh, great." She's like, "So where are you going now?" I'm like, "Home." Like, but just creating that culture because she knew what she was called to do, right? And she
Mhm.
knew that she still had to serve the customer in spite of the customer. And I think that's one key that's critical because when you get into high school and middle school and maybe even elementary, the attitudes and dispositions of the scholar is not what you would like. So how do
Mm.
you break through to them, Amber? So we talked about the staff, right? And said we can kind of manage the adults, right? Because that's their livelihood. But how do you manage these young scholars from different backgrounds, different ideas, and just different, uniquely
Mhm.
different?
I think again, it's crafting experience with them in mind. So, how do you systematize student culture? We talked about how we systematize staff culture, but student culture begins the same way, beginning with a vision and then thinking about those different components of the day. So, part of our morning routine once students were in the classrooms were checking in with them, were
Oh,
that should be a time for the teacher to be building relationships with the students so that we can create a student centered environment.
mhm,
Because if you're engaging with them for 5 to 10 minutes every morning about how are you doing, what do you like to do outside of school, what are you going to do this weekend, oh, what kind of shows do you watch, you
mhm.
can then take that information that you've collected and we can create experiences, we can create activities that are aligned to their interests.
Oh
And
my
so sometimes you just don't know how much even a simple asking people questions about them what impact that has on their lives. And I know it does get more complex the older the students get, in terms of what those systems and structures could look like to honor them and to create a design or environment in school that's centered around them. But I think that's the problem when we don't do that, because
Mm,
our kids love video gaming. And you mentioned church, so I have a church example of something that I said, if we could do that in school, that would be awesome. We attended a church once, and where outside of the children's ministry, they had video games where the kids could
mm,
play before they went inside church. And
ooh,
the kids loved it. And maybe it was just 15 minutes that they got a chance to do that, as drop off was happening. And then they went into their actual routine. But
yeah.
that's what I mean when I say reimagining. And of course, they had it in a casing where nobody could break it. It was just, you know,
How
on
fun.
ball. But those type of things where it's like I see myself reflected in the experience that is being curated for me, I think that speaks to students. I know there are some teachers, and I've seen this in secondary, and I'm like, oh, that's such a great idea. The first few weeks of school, they have the students submit songs that they like, and
Oh,
they create a playlist. And so maybe the first 10 minutes of every class is quiet writing time, but the music that's playing in the background are the songs that the kids submitted at the beginning of
mm,
for the year, of the things that they're interested in. So those are little things that
yeah,
are a part of student culture, and students being able to see, like, there is some consideration about my thoughts, my
right.
interests being taken into how I am attending school, instead of everything just being because I said so. This is how we
That-
do it here. I don't do that. Like, we
Mm,
have to get away from that, because these up and coming generations, they
mm.
know what they like, they know what they're passionate about. And so, how can we just begin to immerse their interests and their passions into school, so it's not necessarily, we don't have to adhere to the traditional sense of doing things?
Oh, wow, I like that. And you know what, that brings up another example I have. My son, he's my social butterfly. So I do have 2 kiddos, but I have one that's a social butterfly and have one
Okay.
that's an introvert. So you don't hear many stories about the introvert because she's quiet. Like she's quiet. But this extrovert, socialite, right? He had a teacher that he loved. And the teacher would talk to them about everything. The stories that I would hear about everyone in the class, I was it was like jaw dropping because like he knew everyone's business. I was like, wow, they do that and what? Their parents do that? Like what? Their parents make that much money? What? Amber, then I had to say, so what are you saying about me? Amber, when I found out that young little scholar was telling that teacher all my
All
business,
your business.
all my so the teacher knew my salary, the teacher knew everything I've done, the teacher knew where I grew up, the teacher knew my whole life, right? But they were amazing, right? They were amazing. And even when they transferred to a different school, all the kids saw them at a game and they lost their mind. You would have thought
Mhm.
Chris Brown or Usher walked up in the stadium, and I'm telling you, droves of kids jumped out the stands just to go speak to them. I was
Wow.
like, I mean, and they were phenomenal. Honestly, they were a phenomenal, phenomenal teacher. But like you said, it's building that relationship with the kids, right? Building that relationship with as many as you can
Mhm.
to get to the heart of who they are. And I think that's what's critical is I think at some point though, you have to care as a person.
Yeah,
You have
you
to
do.
care for another. So with that, now you said this, which leads me to this next question. Where do you envision the future of the culture and education?
Hmm. My hope would be that, um, district leaders
Mm,
continue or begin, because some of them are not yet,
okay.
continue or begin to prioritize culture.
Okay. Mm,
Um, the reason I say that is because even within the organization I'm in now, like, they are very intentional about culture, very intentional about birthday celebrations, very
yes.
intentional about celebrating different holidays and doing that in a way where it just brings people together, whether it's we're going to celebrate the Chinese New Year or we're celebrating Hanukkah,
Okay.
just different ways of engaging. And that was something that I planned monthly for as a campus leader, but oftentimes my team and I would figure out how to finance those things.
Okay.
I think that my hope is in order for culture to be a focus more in education, our district leaders who sometimes did not come up during a time where culture was prioritized. So
Mm,
since they're far removed, there might be like, we don't need to do that. You don't need to celebrate nobody's birthday. Y'all get paid to come to work. You come to work, you work, you go home. That's how this works. So we have to just have an open mind to looking at those cross industry examples. What are other industries doing to celebrate culture? What does
mm,
that look like to in the district that I worked in? They recently just started doing anniversary pins to recognize the years of service. That had never been done before. But
what?
other companies have been doing that. Industries have been honoring people, 40-year employees, 30-year employees in education, and you have nothing. You have got nothing. They have given you
Really?
nothing. So there
Wow.
are so many examples of things that we could be doing in education that could create and cultivate a better culture, but it really starts at the top
Okay.
because there's only so much that our campus leadership can do. Campus
Okay.
leaders can try, and if
Okay.
they don't have the blessing of the senior leadership, then some of those efforts may fail. I get a lot of comments on some of my culture videos. Well, how do you pay for this? How do
Ooh,
you do that? And
mm,
so those are great questions. Great questions. If you don't have the funds or you don't have the PTA or
okay.
PTO support to be able to finance doing these things, you have to get creative. Well, what
Mm,
if I'm so stressed with my regular part of my job, like I don't have the capacity to do that?
yeah.
So that's where it really helps to have supportive leaders. I
Yeah.
had a very supportive supervisor who's now a mentor, and she
Wow.
frequently talked about curb to classroom, frequently talked about
Mm,
how do you create the experiences. We had principal meetings where it was just principals, and she would create a theme for us during the meeting.
okay.
And what I took is that gives me permission to then go and do this type of stuff for my team.
Okay.
And I know the impact that it had on me to come in and see, oh, it's October and you thought enough to put pumpkins and to
Mm.
do, and I know everybody's not cutesy, but some of that stuff just shows extra care.
I like that. And it's interesting that you said that because I coach teams according to an agile framework. And I wrote a paper because I'm in my doctoral program of strategic leadership. And one of the things I focus on that's needed for leaders now in this generation with this culture and to build culture is an agile state of mind, being agile in the way you lead because it leads to flexibility and it leads to transformational leadership. And it
Mhm.
seems like that's what's needed um, overall, right? An
Yes.
agile mindset and being transformative, right? How are we going to transform the culture in the schools and the culture with the students? So how do we go forward and resolve these challenges?
I think that some resolving challenges first starts with acknowledging that there is a challenge.
Okay.
So
Mm,
there are certain education spaces, educational systems that are not currently evaluating their culture. As
okay.
much as so in the district I worked in, we evaluated their students took a survey and it says like, do you feel welcome? It evaluated the culture. And that was data that we got back as teachers. And I'll never forget, I got back that data from my third graders because in third grade was the first time they took a teacher survey.
Really? What?
I got the data back. And one of the questions that they were asked was like, does your teacher ask about your outside activities and what you do on the weekend or whatever, something like that? And I was not rated highly. And I
Really?
was so disappointed, but I had 3 classes that I
Mhm.
saw, and I think it was a mix of students across the 3 classes, so it wasn't so maybe with my first class, we had more built-in time to do that, but
Okay.
it really made me reflect on how do I ensure that no matter what time of day you come to me, even if you come at the end of the day when I'm already kind of tired. I'm feeling rushed. And no, I'm not probably going to ask you about your weekend because that's not the first top of mind thing for me at I'm seeing you at 1 o'clock. Like, what did you do this weekend?
Mm,
No. So it made me reflect on how I engage with all of my students.
okay.
But we can't admit that there's a problem with our culture if we're not collecting data that shows it. The other
Mm,
thing we did as principals, the staff took a climate survey, and
okay.
that survey said, like, I can go to my principal and I feel heard by my principal. And
Mm.
I will never forget my first year with that survey. I was like,
Oh,
"Oh,
like
oh,
really?
what? This is how
Mm,
y'all feel?"
really?
And instead of taking that personally, I took it as a challenge to improve my culture. And
Wow.
so we cannot, again, go forward to improving our culture if we don't acknowledge that there's a challenge and acknowledge that there are areas we can improve in. So
Okay.
having a tool where we're measuring whether we have a positive culture and climate or a negative one does help. I will like to say and clear this up to show that I did make changes. By the time I left my last climate and culture survey, my campus ranked in the top 10 of about 150 elementary
Yeah.
schools
What?
because of the changes that I made to
Yes.
respond to that feedback about culture.
Mm,
And my old staff still calls me now and says, I actually went to lunch with one of them this week. And what he told me, he was like, I knew you were a good principal
yeah.
while you were there and while you were my principal. But now that I don't have you anymore and I'm
Mm.
kind of comparing, doing a little comparison, you
Wow.
are, I'll probably never have a principal like you again.
Oh,
And
wow.
he said it was because of my focus on culture, and
Mm,
that then allowed them to be the best teachers that they could be.
really? That is so powerful. Because that was going to be my question, like what shaped and transformed you into the principal that you were. So do you mentor others along the same lines that you were mentored and that situation made you transition to?
Yes, I do. I offer like one-on-one coaching, but I also just am a firm believer in picking up other people as you climb. So
Mm,
anytime somebody reaches out to me, like, I have a principal interview, I need help,
okay.
I help them because there were people who helped me and who have been strategic in my journey. And
Okay.
so that's another reason I'm really passionate about supporting aspiring leaders
Okay.
because I made this comment earlier. There's some things they don't teach you in school. So
Mm,
I would rather let me just share some practical wisdom from you with you from application that I know from my experience that no, they probably can't give you a book to read about this because there is not one, but I can give you these little nuggets.
okay.
So that's just something I feel very passionate about. And I felt also when I became a principal, there's a lot of competition in principalship. I
Ooh,
think it depends on the districts that you work in, but sometimes leaders are pitted against each other because they rank the schools in terms of academic performance. And
oh wow.
so if you feel like this school is doing better than your school but I don't operate like that because I think that we all have I operate in an abundance mentality is more than enough and all these kids need to improve in achievement. So I'm not
Mm,
in competition with anybody. What
wow.
I'm in competition with is myself from yesterday. Am I better than who
Yeah.
I was yesterday? And once I realized that there was this competition, I kind of committed to myself, like, how can I not be a part of the problem and not contribute to that with other principles that come into this? How can
Okay.
I show, like, you need this resource? I'll email it over right now. You need
Mm,
this? I got you. Don't forget they said to do this because
okay.
it's having that kind of network and kind of collaboration that we can all thrive.
Yes. Oh, wow. That's so powerful. So, say that there's a principal wanting to go into that level of leadership. What nuggets or knowledge would you give them?
Whew. Um, I would tell them that hmm, go into leadership for the right reasons
Okay.
because
Mm,
leadership is definitely not for the faint of heart, and I'm sure that's across industries.
mm,
You are you can a lot of times in education somebody was a really good teacher and then they become an administrator
yeah.
because you were such a good teacher. Sometimes the skills that are needed to be a good teacher are not the same skills that are needed to be a good administrator. And
Got
I'm not saying that you should, we do want people who have strong instructional knowledge to go into leadership, in school leadership. So I am saying that, but I'm not, sometimes they don't have the people skills.
it.
They don't have the self-awareness. They
Okay.
don't have the emotional intelligence,
Mm,
uh, because
okay.
there are a lot of interactions and things that happen just in leadership that you have to be prepared for. So
Okay.
you have to make sure you're going in aware that there's probably opportunities for growth that you might not have experienced if you're not coming from a people management position or
Mm,
just more of an adult facing role. And
okay.
that's something you just have to be okay with. And it's a learning curve.
Mm,
And so just being willing to own up to mistakes is a big one as a leader,
okay.
because you're going to make them, and I made them. And so
Mm,
just having to go back to people and say, you know, I said this or I did this, and I recognize now that that wasn't
mm,
whatever it was, and being okay with that. And I think that kind of makes you a better leader when you're able to be vulnerable, be transparent. But if you're going into leadership for the wrong reasons, then
mm.
it'll be harder to do those things because you'll be so focused on the other reasons you decided to go into leadership.
Wow. Yeah. That is so key because you have to love it, right? And like you said, the forward-facing type of leadership is so different and critical. So, do you think a person has to be a teacher first or in education to be a good leader in education?
Yes.
Really? Tell me why.
At least a school leader in education for sure. Like you can't,
Okay.
I don't think you could, yeah, just
That's a whole different topic. That
we
okay.
can, yeah, we could go.
Mm.
Yeah. No, I don't think so.
Really? Okay, that's interesting. Very interesting. Okay. So how do leaders in education stay motivated as challenges and situations pivot
Mm.
inside their schools and organizations? How do they stay motivated?
This might sound cliche, but I think you have to stay you have to stay connected to your why,
Okay. Mm,
because challenges are going to come, because it's a people facing business where you're dealing with stakeholders, students, parents, community members. And in the nature of dealing with people, things are bound to happen.
okay.
Conflicts are bound to happen, challenges, problems. And when they do happen, I think it's very important that you're able to disconnect your why from
Mm,
that problem.
okay.
Because if you just choose to focus on those problems that happen, it can be harder to be like, I'm to stay motivated. It's harder to stay motivated. But when you remember what's at the center of why you do what you do, and that's not always easy,
Mm,
but when you stay connected to that, it can make it easier. The other thing is surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals. I
mm,
had mentors and people I was able to call and be like, "Hey, okay, so this happened.
okay.
I really want to quit, but what would
Yeah.
you do?"
What would you do?
And they're like, "Okay, you'll get through this. This will be done
Mm,
in a few days. Like, this is just, it seems really big right now." But you need those people to help you stay grounded, because when you don't have those, leadership already feels lonely. But
mm,
when you have people you can call and lean on to remind you that this is short term, it's not long term, it'll be over eventually. That really does help.
so having a good community that makes a lot of sense. So this is the last question. We're rounding the corner to our time. So I'm building a playbook for leaders. What is one or two things that you wish you knew going into leadership that you wish someone had told you, or you wish you knew just by experience? What's that thing that you could put in the playbook? Like, this is it. Remember this as you go into leadership.
I would say to check in with people often. And
Okay.
so having those systems around, like just checking in, not necessarily about the work, but just about like
Mm,
how how they're going, how things are going, feedback for you. Like, what can I do to be a better leader to you?
mm,
And so having those things kind of scheduled throughout the year. So somebody did give me the advice, like when I got hired as principal, sit down with all of the staff, have
yeah.
questions that you ask them. So I did like a sip and chat and invited them to a local coffee shop, and just asked them a few questions like, what do you need from me in a leader? I wish that somebody would have told me to do that like ongoing, Sometimes
Okay.
it's hard to hear, and that's why we don't do stuff like that. But I
Okay.
think I would tell a aspiring leader as a part of the toolkit to continue to get that feedback because it's only going to make you better.
That is so powerful. And you have a good coaching background, Amber. I see some
Uh,
coaching in there. I'm like, huh, she's been reading my books. She's in my coaching book because that's a lot of what I've done with my teams is what I call them empathy meetings or coffee chats.
yep.
Just sitting down. And one of my last questions is, what can I do? What can I do better? What do you need to see in me? And people are like shocked. I'm like, no, it's not a trick question. Like it's a genuine question.
Mhm.
And in those times and meeting, I found so much knowledge and information that I wouldn't have gotten before had we just been in, just regular work environment and task settings and things like that. But I like the idea of actually going out and having coffee. And now I do virtual coffee because everything's virtual. So like,
Yeah.
let's have a virtual coffee. You have yours, I have mine. That is so awesome, Amber. I love these ideas, and I hope that our audience can really gravitate to these ideas and change the culture, right, of our school systems, change the culture of the way we're leading the
Mhm.
adults and the way we're leading these young people. Because the way that you've painted this picture, Amber, if we implement some of these things, our future is so bright
It is.
for our kiddos. And because they're our future leaders, right? They're the ones we're going to be voting for when we're like 85. They are the people that will be in charge. And the program and the system that you laid out helps everyone communicate better, helps everyone be effective, help everyone collaborate and communicate to better. And that's what we want, right? We want everyone to be better. So Amber, tell our audience how can they get in touch with you if someone needs a mentor or just someone to
Yeah.
chat with, or just as I watch you on the social, I watch all your videos. So just so you know,
Oh, thank you.
all your videos. So walking out the parking lot in your car, I watch, and you have good material. I'm like, there's Amber.
Well, the platform that I am most active on is TikTok. So they can definitely follow me there at principal_mommy. There I do have my website linked and I can share that with you as well, Yvette, to just put in the post for this video. And then I also am available just via email. So principalmommy3@gmail.com. I just welcome people to reach out to me. And again, I am fueled by supporting aspiring leaders and current leaders, as I know what it's like to need support while you're on that journey.
Yeah, and a journey it is, right? So, if you're on that journey, we wish luck and blessings and just tons of support. So, hopefully we can build a community of support for one another. And you made me think of it. So many opportunities to build community, and I know a lot of schools may not have resources, right? There may not be resources for people, but these platforms like this make everyone global, right? So there
Mhm.
should be resources out there that can be tapped into and from other areas, right? No young person should be left without because there's so much out there. So if there's opportunities to support one another, I think we should do that. And even maybe that's a good TikTok too.
Yeah,
Because not everyone is in, crunch times, and not every school district doesn't have the means.
yeah, that's
So why
very true.
not support each other?
Yeah.
We're all on, these platforms. So yeah,
Call it social media professional development.
that's it. And that's what it is. Because you start scrolling, and it's like, oh my goodness, time has got away from me. So yeah, I totally get it. But Amber, thank you so much for joining. As always, it's been a pleasure. And I mean, I thought I knew you before, but I know you now. And just your knowledge is amazing. So I'm
Oh,
excited to see where you go from here and how you continue to empower the school system and empower aspiring leaders. So I wish you the best in
thank you
all
so
you do
much. And thank
because
you again for the opportunity.
it's my pleasure. Oh my goodness. It truly is my pleasure. But everyone, thank you so much for joining this conversation with Amber and myself. It's been a true joy to talk with Amber, and I'm so grateful for that. But this is Legendary Leaders, and I always say, don't be ordinary, be legendary. If you don't know what to do, if you don't have anything else you can do not be ordinary. be legendary. But have a great day, friends, and we'll talk later. Bye for now.